Thank you for attending our COVID-19, the myths, the facts, and the vaccine webinar. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Gerald J. Maarman. Dr. Gerald J. was born and raised in a disadvantaged community in Kleinvlei, Eersterivier, Cape Town. He has been on a long and tough life journey, but has managed to achieve success despite adversity. He is a lecturer at Tygerberg Medical School, the University of Stellenbosch. He completed his BSc degree in Functional Human Biology BSc, honors degree in MSc degree in Medical Cardiovascular Physiology. Gerald also holds a PhD in Medical Cardiovascular Physiology in Cardiology Medicine. He has received multiple accolades in research and has been published internationally and nationally. He is an NRF-rated researcher with international standing and professional memberships, as well as faculty positions on several medical associations. He has been a born-again Christian for more than 26 years and is actively involved in the ministry. His life story has served as an inspiration to thousands of young people throughout the country, and he continues doing so in the community development in disadvantaged communities in South Africa. So we're just going to have a few house rules. Please, can you all just mute your mics and turn off your videos? And then for questions, you may type it in the chat box and we will answer the questions after Doctor has given his presentation. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation. It is obviously a real pleasure and a privilege for me to be here to sort of talk to your team and everyone that is present. I have to say I have been doing these types of talks for the past year, and it's sometimes it's been challenging and other times it's been fun, but most of the time we do achieve empowering our people, because I think that's the most important part of a talk like this, is to empower people, because there is a lot of information available these days about COVID-19, and anyone with enough sense would know that not all the information out there is correct. There's a lot of false information, there's a lot of misinformation, and unfortunately many people fall prey to that. I have seen numerous WhatsApp videos that have been forwarded to me, people asking my opinion, and close to 100% of those videos have been fake, or voice notes have been fake or completely incorrect. So we want to deal with a few of those things today. And I am going to share a short presentation, but the part where I want to get at is the question and answering. So we want to get to that part. So I'm sharing my screen with you. You should see it in front of you. I'm just going to go to presenter view. Just skip back, then we can move on with the presentation. So yes, I am from the institute called CARMA, which is the Center for Cardiometabolic Research in Africa. It is based at the Tygerberg Medical School, and we are at the University of Stellenbosch. I'm also a lecturer. I want to put the following disclaimer up. I think this is very important, because it is important for the people to know that, first of all, I am not employed by the South African government or any of these major health organizations or institutions like the WHO, the CDC, Johnson Johnson, and so forth. I have absolutely no relation to these institutions, and therefore I'm a bit more free in giving my opinion based on the data. And everything that I'll share today is based on data that have been published in the world's best medical journals. But it's important for you to know that because I don't work for these institutions, therefore, I don't share their opinion. Nothing that I say is their opinion or related to them. It is purely based on medical data review that is being performed by myself. which is part of my job. If you go through my CV, you'll see that I am a peer reviewer or an external reviewer for many of the world's biggest medical and scientific journals. So this is part of my job. So that's my disclaimer. I'm going to skip through a few slides, but the important thing is we know that COVID-19 is here. COVID-19 is real. It is not a hoax. It is not fake. It is not something that is made up, because something that is a hoax does not kill millions of people around the world. And so the first important thing that you have to know that COVID-19 is real. I have personally had many family members that have passed away, friends that have passed away, and because I'm in the ministry as well, I have I have lost many pastor friends of mine due to COVID-19. So COVID-19 is real. There's no doubt about that. We have never seen a disease like COVID-19 where you would have cases where a mother and a father would pass away in the same house. There were even cases where parents would pass away on the same day due to COVID-19, and the next day a son or a daughter would pass away. And we've had tuberculosis as a pandemic, we've had HIV, but not even those diseases have caused the kind of devastation as COVID-19 has. So clearly it is real. It is not a hoax. I put up this slide because I wanted to show you that there are now variants. We are well aware of the variants. Perhaps many of you even know these variants much better than I do. But there are variants out there. In South Africa, we have variants as well. We've seen what the variant has done in India, the devastation that it's caused. And I will deal with that, but I put up the slide because I wanted to show you that not just is COVID-19 devastating, but it slightly got worse when the virus mutated, and we have these variants that are now roaming around in the world in different countries, making the context with COVID-19 so much more devastating. If I could briefly go into this, I put up the slide because this is a picture of how the human lungs look like. And this is the lung of a healthy person, and you can see how healthy it looks. It's usually light in color. Obviously, if you're a smoker, then the lungs would be much more darker in color and a bit more destroyed. But I want you to see that on this figure, you've got this, this tube almost, which connects with your throat, and this is where we breathe in and out from. And when you breathe in and out, this is where the virus would then enter from your mouth into this tube and into your lungs. And the virus would then go and sit there. But on the next slide, I show you how complex the lungs look like. The lungs are very complex. In the lungs, you can see that it's just it's not just an air sac that breathes in oxygen and breathes out carbon dioxide. It's a bit more complex than that. And you can see that the lungs are so complex that inside they have these many blood vessels that allows blood to move in and out of the lungs. So you can see how complex it is. When you go deeper into the lung, this is what you see, and this is the air sacs. In Afrikaans, we call it lugsakkies or alveoli. And these air sacs is when you breathe in, air would come in from your mouth through this tube into your lung and would go sit into these air pockets. And this is where the oxygen would sit, which will then diffuse into other parts of your body. But when you have COVID-19, COVID-19 would enter into the lungs, not just sit in the mouth and the throat and the tongue and so forth, but it would actually go down into the lung as you breathe it in, and it would get stuck all along the way of the lung, even deep into the alveoli. And when the virus sits there, it would cause a lot of destruction. Now, I want you to see that in the lung, you not only have these air pockets that would keep in your oxygen or contain your oxygen, but you also have blood vessels. So when you have COVID-19, the virus would destroy these air pockets so that you therefore not able to contain oxygen. And this is why most people who have COVID-19 have very low oxygen levels. In the same time, the virus can also cause destruction to the blood vessels, meaning that the oxygen that is there cannot be transported via these blood vessels to the rest of the body. And this is why COVID-19 is so devastating. I think it is important to also note here that one person might have, for example, 1 million of these blood these air sacs in your lungs. And if you and one person might have COVID-19 and the virus might destroy, for example, say 500,000 of these air pockets, where another person might have COVID-19 and have it so severe that the virus can destroy a lot more of these air pockets. And therefore you would have the same infection. So, you know, two persons might have COVID-19, both might have COVID-19, but the one might have it much more severe and the other one might not. And the reason why that is because the virus would infect many more of these air pockets and destroy many more of these blood vessels in one person, and that person might die, where another person, the virus would sit there and perhaps not go so deep into the lung and therefore cause less destruction, and that person might survive. And so this is how you might have different levels of severity within the COVID-19 disease. What you also need to see, now we don't have to go into details in this particular slide, but what you also need to see is a paper was published, I think, in European Journal and in Respiratory Journal in 2020, but there's a lot more papers after that, where they've shown that the virus actually causes what we call endothelial dysfunction. Let me just go back. And that just basically means that the virus destroys those blood vessels there. There's also a paper that was published showing that how the virus actually destroys the air pockets in your lung, and you can see that this one in figure A looks quite normal, where in figure B you can see there's a bit of destruction there, and this is how the virus actually, how much destruction the virus can actually cause. So when you look at this, this was a paper that was published to show that the virus can not only cause COVID-19 in the lungs, but it can actually also go sit in your heart and cause a form of heart inflammation or myocarditis, which can be fatal. So showing how devastating the virus is, and that's just another picture of a heart scan that we took there. We also see that 6 months after a patient had COVID-19 and the patient had now recovered from COVID-19, we see that a patient would still have the devastating effects of COVID-19. So we still see, you know, mild to moderate forms of illness even after the patient has recovered from COVID-19, or even after you've come out of isolation for 14 days. You might still have some symptoms of COVID-19, fatigue, loss of sense, loss of smell, loss of taste, chest pain, and so forth. And for this reason, a number of my colleagues and I, I've been very privileged to be part of an international COVID-19 study that looks at COVID-19 patients between 21 different countries around the world, including South Africa. And what we notice is that patients, after they've had COVID-19, they still have these long-term side effects or long-term effects of COVID-19. And so we want to make sure that these patients are treated well, so that we don't sit with a situation where 6 months later or a year later, we have patients that develop other diseases or secondary diseases after having COVID-19. So we want to make sure that long-term we follow these patients up. But the reality is that the devastating effects of COVID-19 in one patient might actually last much longer than what we anticipated in the beginning. So then, of course, there is this third wave. The third wave has now happened. It is here. It cannot be denied. The Professor Juliet Pulliam, as director of SACIMA at Stellenbosch University, gave us data initially. I think it was around about the 12th of May, showing us that the new wave is officially there, and that by 12th of May there was already a 35% increase in the new cases of COVID-19. We have now gone close to 60,000, almost 60,000 deaths. So I think it is important for us to know that the third wave is here and the third wave is real. I often get this question, if I can just skip through that slide. I often get this question, why do you get a wave? Why do we have a first wave, second wave, and a third wave? And even friends of mine who are not in the field of medicine would tell me, yeah, but I think these wave things are made up and it is planned, because how can you so accurately determine when the wave will strike? And actually, it is very easy based on statistical methods to determine, based on previous, not just previous pandemics, but the previous behavior of a pandemic, to determine when a new wave will hit. And the reason why we have a third wave is mostly because of human behavior, because people unfortunately refuse to listen to the advice and that is given to them. And because of that, we often sit with another wave. And so unfortunately, that is a reality. So painting the picture that COVID-19 obviously is now a very devastating disease brings us to the point of the need for a vaccine. Now, vaccines are nothing new to the human race. We have had vaccines for many, many years, and vaccines have really been saving lives in the context of other diseases. And I think that it is important to know that vaccines are important. And obviously in COVID-19, there's been quite a number of vaccines, including the Johnson Johnson one that's been rolled out in South Africa, as well as the Pfizer one that is currently being rolled out. So just to let you know that I have received my vaccine at Tygerberg Hospital, and I was part of the health workers that received vaccines, and I received the Johnson Johnson vaccine as part of the Sasonke trial. And I am still alive and I'm still well. And a few months ago, well, let's say before the vaccines were rolled out, there were a lot of videos going around that basically said that if we take the vaccines, we will turn into zombies. If we take the vaccine, we are going to fall over and die, and all these bad things are going to happen to us. And months down the line, millions of people have received the vaccine and people are fine. I have not turned into into a zombie. I might look like a zombie, but I haven't turned into one after my vaccine. So I have gotten it. The side effects that I had were quite mild. In fact, I consider myself as one of the unlucky ones, because I literally had all the side effects that you could have because of the vaccine. So we can talk about that if you have questions, but I've had the side effects, and after a few hours, my side effects were gone and I'm quite well. What is an mRNA vaccine? I get this question a lot. People ask me, what is mRNA? What is an mRNA vaccine? And I think it is important to deal with this, because if you are not in the field of medicine or science and you're not aware of the molecular biology field, then a term like mRNA is completely foreign to people. And it is important for us to explain that, because of the vaccine contains the mRNA, but what does that mean? What does it do? So let me try and explain that to you before I go on to questions. But what you see in this slide is the virus. This is how the virus looks like. This is a SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. And what you can see in front of you is the many spikes, the spike proteins that sit on the outside of the virus. And obviously you can think to yourself that the virus uses these spikes to attach itself to the human body. So when you breathe it in, these spikes would then literally get stuck in your airways and in your lungs, and that's how the virus attaches itself. Then what you see on the inside is the genetic material of the virus. Now, to people who's not familiar with the field, genetic material, all of us contain or have genetic material. This is how we can reproduce. This is how we can have kids that look like us. This is why, for example, if you have a child, your child could have your big nose or your type of hair or the color of your skin, because you contain genetic information, and that genetic information we can basically we can transfect our next generation with that. And I think that is important to know. Let me just explain a bit on the genetic information. This is how it looks like. Humans contain what we call DNA. Now, I want us to be very careful here, because human contains what we call DNA, and most viruses like the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19 contains the RNA. Now, these two genetic material are completely different. They're not the same, right? So therefore, it is impossible if they vaccinate you with the mRNA, then it is impossible for the mRNA to change your DNA because these two things do not interact. And also, the human body consists of billions and billions of cells. And each and every one of these billions of cells contains your DNA, or your genetic information. Now, it is impossible for an mRNA vaccine to change the DNA of billions and billions and billions of cells. It is not possible, right? We know that mRNA, after you've been vaccinated, it lasts for up to 5 minutes. After that, the body has enzymes that will destroy the mRNA. So you have about 5 minutes, and it is impossible for a vaccine within 5 minutes to change the DNA of billions and billions and billions of cells. It is not possible. So therefore, this rumor that the vaccine will change your DNA or alter your DNA is incorrect. Okay, let's go back to the virus. I'm going to skip the slide. I'm going to go back to the mRNA because I want you to see that what scientists now have done is that they've taken a very small portion. If you look at my pointer, a very small portion of the genetic information of the virus was taken. That genetic information contains the information that will tell the body to make the spike protein that you see there. The body will not make the virus. The body will only make the spike protein so that the immune system would recognize the spike protein, and the immune system will be able, if you get infected in the future, your immune system will say to itself, hey, I recognize the spike protein. This spike protein comes from the COVID-19 or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and therefore your immune system would be able to attack the virus, and it would give you a better chance of surviving. That's the main purpose of it. Only a small portion of the information, genetic information of the virus was taken. We call that an mRNA. That mRNA then gives the body the instruction to make the spike protein so that you can have an immune response. I like to explain it in this way. For me, it's like an ATM. The ATM can give you money, but it's not going to give you money if you don't give it an instruction, right? And so what we do is we give the ATM an instruction, and what comes out? Money. An instruction is given, i.e. information is given, and there's something that comes out. We call that an end result, and that in the case of an ATM, that's money. Now, if we take that same analogy and we apply it to the virus, like I said, we took the small genetic information from the virus. It contains the information in the instruction to make that spike protein. What we do now by giving you a vaccine, we are just basically giving the body the instruction to make the spike protein. And the end result that comes out, like the cash out of an ATM, is a good immune response, minimization of the severity of the symptoms, and the prevention of death. And that is essentially what the mRNA vaccine is, and this is what the mRNA vaccine does. And then, of course, what I show you in this particular figure is the different vaccines. Now, I also had this comment from somebody that that the ingredients of the vaccine is not known, that the government is hiding the ingredients of the vaccine. They're not going to take it because they don't know what's in the vaccine. But in actual fact, I wanna kill that myth here today, because we do know what is inside the vaccines. We do know what the ingredients of the vaccines are. And as a scientist that does laboratory experiments, I know many of these ingredients are actually quite well known to us. So not just does the vaccine contain the genetic information, like I said, but it also contains some other things. For example, like it contains salt water. Now, if you inject anything into the human body, it is important that what you inject doesn't cause damage to the site of injection, or doesn't cause damage to the muscle or the blood vessels. And to prevent that damage, you need to add things to what you inject. So therefore, salt water, like sodium chloride, is a well-known thing that is, we get it as a drip or an IV when you go to the hospital. It contains salt water. And the idea is just that it creates the right pH, or it protects the cells at the site of injection, or it protects the cells in the blood circulation of the body so that it doesn't cause damage. So these ingredients are known, and many of these ingredients are very well known. In fact, all of them are very well known. So there's nothing in the vaccine that is suspicious that could cause you to die. I'm gonna, before I stop to go to questions, I think I wanted to make this point as well. I have received many people sending me messages saying that I don't trust the vaccine because anything that is made so quick has a risk to it. Now that we have to deal with that, because I don't know where this idea comes from that anything that is made so quick, because the vaccine, apologies, has been tested on thousands of people before it got to the point where it was given to or rolled out around the world. And the vaccine has been tested in thousands of people, right? It's not something that has not been tested. It's not something that is still in a testing phase. The testing phase is over. This is not a testing phase. This is the rollout phase, meaning that it has already been tested in thousands of volunteers that have given their bodies to say, please test it on me. So it has been tested in thousands of people. This is not a testing phase. This is the rollout. This is the real thing. It is important to understand that. The reason why the vaccine manufacturers were able to manufacture the vaccine in such a short space of time was because, number one, a lot more manpower was given to the vaccine production. Also, a lot of funding was funneled into that. A lot of research resources were given. And by all of that, and vaccine manufacturers were able to actually manufacture the vaccine in a much shorter space of time. Now that is amazing, and it just teaches us in the field of medicine that we can actually help people much quicker if we just have much more funding, much more researchers, resources, and a lot more manpower. So somebody said to me that, maybe I should explain this, but in medical research, we have these laws that govern us. So as a researcher or a company, I can't just do research randomly on people and test anything. Those things are regulated, very well regulated. And if any of those rules are broken, a person can actually go to jail, or a company can actually all the people can go to jail, or they can go to court, they can be sued, and all these other things. One of these rules and regulations is what we call the Declaration of Helsinki, just meaning that we need to protect people on whom we test, vaccines in the beginning phases, for example, people who we do research on. We need to make sure that we protect them, that there's a benefit to the participants, that no wrong is done. People should give their consent when the research is being done, and so forth. So that is one rule. Another rule or regulation is what we call the Nuremberg Code. And again, the same type of principle, that there must be a favorable risk benefit. If at any time the research is deadly to a person, then that has to be stopped, right? So I have to say that as far as I am aware, that none of these laws have been violated in the testing of the vaccines. It has not been violated. So to say that the vaccine manufacturers have violated the rights of these people is wrong, because the thousands of people who volunteered for these, the testing phase, they gave their consent, right? And these processes were very well regulated. So it is important to understand this. So I already touched on this, a lot more resources, manpower, and there was a greater focus, and therefore manufacturers were able to produce the vaccine much quicker. So I'm going to stop at this point, because I think I want us to go over to questions so that we have enough time to go to questions. So at this point, I'm just going to switch back and share my screen and hand over to the chair for questions.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was very insightful. We have a few questions here, so I'm just going to read it out. if a person is scheduled for the vaccination 21 days after contracting the COVID-19 and they have fully recovered, is it dangerous to go for the vaccination? We are concerned about missing this opportunity and waiting years for the recall to get vaccinated. Some sources on the internet say there will be an overreaction from the immune system so soon after the recovery, and we must wait 90 days.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. The answer to that is that is actually incorrect. It is not true. You can be vaccinated even if you have if you have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past, or if you currently test positive for COVID-19, you can take the vaccine. And even 21 days after you've had the disease, you can still get the vaccination. So these two things do not interfere with one another, and it is quite safe. And as far as I know, in South Africa, you do not have to wait 90 days for you to get the vaccine. The vaccine is available to everyone who wants the vaccine.
Okay. And then the next question is, why do they say that the flu vaccine, Vaxigrip, helps one immune response also to COVID response?
I don't know where that information comes from, but as far as I know, these two vaccines have nothing to do with one another. So if you take the flu vaccine, it cannot protect you against COVID-19. And after taking the flu vaccine, your body will create an immune response against that particular flu. So the flu vaccine cannot induce an immune response towards COVID-19. They do not work like that. So the only reason why the government would, for example, say for people at the same time that you get vaccinated for COVID-19, we must still get vaccinated for flu. And the reason why is because close to 10,000 people die a year in this country due to flu. So we need to minimize the deaths, not just of COVID-19, but also of flu. That's the one reason why people need to go for a flu vaccine as well. But also, we need to relieve the pressure on the health system in South Africa. And so this is why if we could have more people go for the flu vaccine as well, then it means that flu people would come to the doctor for flu illness, in addition to the thousands of people that already are putting a pressure on the health system. So it is important that you go. But again, it is up to people's own consent.
Okay, and then there's another question where the person says, on our school group, a call was put out for people testing of another vaccine against COVID-19 but the person had to, commodities, not sure what that word, I think it's a typo. How does this work, and the thinking of the Helsinki Protocol or law?
So I am not aware, to be honest, of another vaccine that is being tested in South Africa, as far as I know. And just to ask you, is that vaccine, does the person say that the vaccine is in South Africa?
Well, yeah, she said, the person said it's on our school group. There was a testing call, so I assume it is in South Africa, yes.
Oh, okay, no, so as far as I know, there's no testing like that. So I think people have to be very careful, because there's a lot of, scammers out there. So please be careful, because there's only one vaccine at the moment being rolled out, and that is the Pfizer vaccine that is rolled out by the South African government. So if any communication does not come from the government, or is not the information about the Pfizer, please don't even go for that, because it might be a scam. Unless it is, for example, I know in the Khayelitsha area in Cape Town, the UNICEF has a medical group that is currently testing in the phase 1 clinical trial. They're testing a new vaccine, but that is also an official process, and it is not being rolled out to the South African population. So please be careful, because I think that might be a scam.
Okay, yeah. And then also $1 million question is Ivamectin a preventative treatment for the coronavirus? And can someone use ivermectin and not get the vaccine?
The answer is absolutely no. Ivermectin, unfortunately, has now been dropped by many countries as a treatment for COVID-19 because initially in South Africa, we had a doctor or two, I think it was a group of doctors in the Eastern Cape that wrote an open letter to President Cyril Ramaphosa and said that they want ivermectin as a treatment for their patients. And it was a big thing in South Africa because there wasn't any data out to support the fact that ivermectin is effective against COVID-19. Now, months later, there's been studies showing that ivermectin is not effective against COVID-19. And so therefore, people should please not use ivermectin. Please don't buy it on the black market because you are going to waste your money. It does not protect you against COVID-19. There's absolutely no data against that. In fact, we've got many more drugs available now in the world, including South Africa, that is much more effective at treating a patient with COVID-19.
Okay, and then another question we have is there an elevated risk of blood clots following the COVID-19 vaccination for people who have predisposition of the blood clots or DVTs?
Yes, so we have noticed now that there are a number of cases that came out where people have developed blood clots after taking the vaccine. And I think, it has been the case for the Johnson Johnson, AstraZeneca, and the Pfizer vaccine, where there's this situation patient might develop clots. Now, this is a very difficult topic because it is difficult to say whether developing clots because of the virus or whether the person is developing clots because of the vaccine. Because the virus itself can actually cause blood clots. This is how the virus is so devastating, because it causes blood clots. And so it is difficult to say, because at this point, there's no study where we can really delineate whether the patient did not have the clots because of the virus and whether the person has the clots because of the vaccine. So at this point, it is difficult to say whether the vaccine is causing it, but we do see that patients have this relations with clots if after taking the vaccine. I have to say the following, though, that blood clots is nothing new to the medical field. There is no doctor out there that will get upset if they see a patient with a blood clot. In fact, I can tell you now that I've got probably 10 family members who sit at home who've had blood clots for the past 20 years. It is nothing new. It's always been there, and we are able to treat that. We're able to clinically manage that. So I think the important thing is that if a patient notices any signs, for example, after taking the vaccine, you might have a pain in the one side of your body, or you might have a pain only in your leg that is constant. Those are serious side effects, and at that point, you have to seek medical attention immediately. And I think the learning curve for South Africa is that we have to monitor our people very carefully after they've taken the vaccine, so that we make sure that we treat them for those clots immediately, right? Otherwise, your risk for getting the clot is actually very low. It is something like 0.000005, which is a very small risk, but there is a risk, and we have to acknowledge that.
And then we have a question that asks, are there people with medical conditions that cannot get the vaccine, say for instance, cancer or other type of medical allergies? What type of side effects did you personally experience, and the side effects that your colleagues have experienced?
Okay, so that's a two-point question, but for the first part of that question, according to the World Health Organization and the Johnson Johnson information that have been given and some of the data out there, the first important thing is that the vaccine is safe and effective in people with known medical conditions. For example, conditions like hypertension, chronic lung disease, cardiac or heart disease, obesity and diabetes, or people living with HIV. If you have these things, then you definitely are, it's safe for you to use the vaccine. What we do know, for example, is that there are, if they have a very low immunity, or like we call them, if they are immunocompromised, it seems that after they've taken the vaccine that they don't generate enough antibodies, meaning that the immune system is not strong enough after taking the vaccine. So those people might need to get another booster, but the jury is still out on that. Otherwise, it is still safe and effective for you to take the vaccine, even if you have those diseases. Let's talk about my symptoms. I had side effects. I got the vaccine at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I was told to take Panado, and then I'll be fine to prevent it. I was told to take 1 Panado every 5 hours, I think. And I decided not to take Panado because after taking my vaccine 1 o'clock, I felt fine. So I went home, I drove home, I was fine, and I was fine for the whole evening. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to take Panado. I was very disobedient. I should have taken the Panado like the doctor said. And then around about the next morning, 6 o'clock, I woke up and I had side effects. So I had body pains, similar like you would have for like a flu when you have a bad flu. You have this general unwellness and this body pains that I had. For me, that was the most uncomfortable. I had a lot of shivers, cold fever, as we call it. So I had chills, and that was also not nice for me because I felt very cold, but yet my body was hot. So that was very uncomfortable for me. I had a headache as well. It was mostly like to the front side of my head. Similar to a babalas, if you know what that is. But that is a type of pain that I had, which was quite constant. And then I didn't have Panado at home. So unfortunately, I was uncomfortable for a few hours until I could go to the shop and get Panados. But as soon as I took the 2 Panados, all the symptoms were gone. So then the side effects were gone.
Wow, that's amazing. Because Panado is definitely not the strongest one you can use for those type of side effects. Okay, and then there is a question about why is the vaccine not registered for younger people, people under the age of 18, especially kids with commodities?
Yes, it's not available for that group of people because it has not been tested in that group of people yet. So all the thousands of people that have been tested were people older than that particular age. Let's say, for example, people older than involved in these clinical studies. Now that kind of makes sense if we think about it, because usually if a child is involved in the testing phase of any research, then that child needs the permission from a legal guardian or from a parent. So they can't just volunteer. And so for that particular reason, many people would not volunteer their children to go for a testing of a vaccine. And so therefore, the vaccine has not been tested in that particular group. And this is why at this point, we would rather say, let's not give it to them because it's not been tested in them. And that's the only reason why.
And is there maybe the possibility for that in the future? Do you know if that's in the loop?
Correct. That is definitely something that is in the loop, and it will definitely. It's a bit more complex because then, as you know, in that research, you need to approach both the parents and the child, and you need to get consent from the child. Do they feel comfortable with it? You need to have the consent of the parents. Do they feel comfortable with it? And then there's other factors that play a role, like which country they are in, or whether the people are religious or not. Is it part of their religion to take vaccines? So it's a bit more complex. And also when you go to younger children, like 3 or 5 years old, you know, would they be able to understand what are the things that we will do to you in that testing phase? So it's a bit more complex, but it's definitely something that is in the pipeline. The same goes for the testing in pregnant ladies, because generally in the field of medicine, we don't include pregnant women in any type of testing or research because of this a lot of uncertainty. But that is also something that is happening in the pipeline. Yes.
Okay, and then if one is on things like methotrexate or immunosuppressant for immunoinflammatory conditions, will the COVID-19 variants vaccine, Vaxigrip, will it still work?
If you are, just repeat that question, if you are under?
If you are on things like immunosuppressants or immunoinflammatory conditions, will the COVID-19 or the variants vaccine or Vaxigrip, will it still work?
Yes, so I think that is maybe just a bit more complex question, because two things. The one thing is that we do see that if a patient, for example, has a suppressed immune system, not necessarily because of a drug that suppresses it, but if your immune system is already suppressed and you take the vaccine, then you see that you get a good immune response, but it is not good enough for you to have protection against the virus. So I think that it is possible that if you take these immune suppressors, that after taking the vaccine, you might not have a good enough immune response. But that doesn't mean that it is toxic for you to take the vaccine when you have these drugs. Then when you take these drugs, it is still safe for you to take the vaccine. I think the only important thing is that if you take these immunosuppressant drugs, then you might need to get a booster vaccine to get your antibodies a bit higher. But at this point, I think it is quite safe for you to take the vaccine if you have these immunosuppressant drugs.
Yeah, and then just a question on that topic. Say, for instance, you have a low immunity. Is there a way that you can just test it so that your doctor or your GP can give you information on if your immunity is high enough in order for you to take the vaccine, or is that not necessary?
It is definitely not necessary, because you need to take, well, we would like people to take the vaccine irrespective of what your immune status is. You do not need to know that information. Usually, if you have some form of underlying disease that affects your immune system, like autoimmune diseases, that where you would take these immunosuppressant drugs like prednisone and so forth, or if you have HIV and you have a very low immune system, or your CD4 count is quite low, if you have cancer and you have a low immune system, those type of cases, you would already know that the patient would have a suppressed immune system because of those underlying diseases, but it is not necessary to test that, because we would like to have people to take the vaccine anyway. Definitely increase your cases of survival.
Okay, and then what is herd immunity, and when will we get herd immunity?
So herd immunity is, for example, in one person, you would have immunity against a virus. In other words, that your immune system is strong enough to fight off the virus and to protect. If you have many people together in one population whose immune system has now been boosted to protect against the virus, we call that herd immunity. Just means that a lot of us in the country or in a population has immune protection against the virus. That's all it means. And to get to that particular point of immunity or herd immunity in a whole population, we need to vaccinate close to 60% of, for example, the South African population. So if we can get to close to 60%, then it means that we have enough people in the country whose immune systems are strong enough to fight off the virus. That is a good thing, because it means that less people will die because of the virus.
And do you have any time allocation of when that might be, or predicament?
That is a very difficult to estimate at this point, because I think as a country, we're doing very poorly when it comes to the rollout of the vaccination. I think we have a lot to still improve on. The rollout, I guess we have to be honest and acknowledge the fact that no country at this point is an expert in rolling out a virus inside a pandemic. It is new to all of us, even to the South African government. So I think we need to cut them some slack because this is new to them as well. So obviously mistakes will be made during the rollout of the vaccine. And so therefore we can see that, you know, it will increase in speed, it will decrease in speed. Sometimes it will go slower, other times it will go faster. It is not just the fault of the government. We have to remember that people decide whether they want to take the vaccine or not. And so if we can have enough people that say, I want the vaccine, then it means that we will get to the point of herd immunity quite quicker. But to tell you how long that's going to take, I'm not. We're probably close to 2 million now. We still have a very, very long way to go.
Okay, and then the final question before you can have some closing thoughts. How long will the Johnson Johnson and Pfizer vaccine last?
I'm not sure I understand that question. How long will it last?
Yeah, I think it's meant to be like, if you take the vaccine, how long will you have immunity forever against COVID, or is there only a certain period?
Yes, that's a good question. So at this point, we know that obviously the body contains what we call memory cells, and whenever you are infected with a virus, your body would recognize and build an immune response, and your body would keep that information in our cells that we call memory cells. There is data showing us that the memory cells last for about 12 months until they are died off and the body creates new ones. So there is people's information out there saying that after taking the vaccine, we might potentially have immunity. You as a person have immunity up to 12 months after the vaccine. Whether that is the case or not, I think the important thing is to realize that number one, the vaccine will save lives. It will prevent deaths. It will lessen the curve. It will, flatten the curve. It would lessen the pandemic. And the whole point of the vaccination is for us to just get out of this pandemic as soon as possible. And if you could have 12 months of protection, that's more than enough for us to stop this pandemic in its tracks. Yeah.
Yes, certainly. And then, Doctor, if you have some closing thoughts for us, you can happily share them.
Thank you so much. Thank you really again for the information. I think it is important for us to know that vaccines are important, and we need vaccinations to prevent death and to make sure that we get out of this pandemic. And I really want to encourage people to actually go for the vaccines. It is really harmless. You will be completely fine. And even if you feel severe symptoms, you are linked to healthcare immediately. No clinic, no hospital can show you a way after you've taken the vaccine and you feel ill. They have to help you. So you have that type of support from the South African government. So the vaccines are important. Also, I'm willing to send you an email address, which is specifically not my professional email address, but an email address where people can contact me if they have questions that they're still unclear about. They're welcome to contact me. The email address is just geraldjmaarman@gmail.com. I can email it to you, or I can put it in the chat section as well. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That would be great if you can put that into the chat section, and then we will obviously compile and share the video on our website and platforms. And thank you to all the attendees for attending the session today, and stay safe and goodbye.
Bye.